More than 3/4 of a century has passed since the dawn of the age of motoring. New Zealanders were quick to use the new invention, and as the years have rolled by, we've become one of the major car-owning nations. But the roads of our motoring history are lined with unsuccessful attempts to build an all-New Zealand car. Back in the 1920s, a car called the Carlton was manufactured in Gisborne. Today, the sole survivor is being restored by the Gisborne Vintage and Veteran Car Club. It was a remarkable car. The engine, gearbox and all major components were made in New Zealand, but it wasn't a success. Just 2 or 3 Carltons were built, then the company went out of business. But even today, the dream of a New Zealand car industry persists. Occasionally, motorists catch a glimpse of an unusual-looking utility vehicle threading its way through city streets. It's powered by a Renault engine, and the final drive uses belts. This system's utilised successfully by the DAF car produced in Holland. The vehicle, along with several other prototypes, was built in a small factory in the Auckland suburb of Glendine. It's very simple and is designed to be produced in low volumes using unskilled labour. But it features a number of unusual design concepts, including gull-wing doors. The vehicle's named the Crowther Toiler, after its designer, Rolly Crowther, a former top racing driver turned businessman. For 13 years, Rolly Crowther's been inspired by a dream that New Zealand can produce a car of its own. A vehicle that would be within the reach of the average man, that would be safe and reliable. A vehicle that would save overseas funds and earn them when it was exported. Rolly Crowther's story so far is one of frustration and heartbreak. He couldn't get the financial backing for his project, so it's been sold to a Fijian firm. They plan to build the utility in Fiji and export it to New Zealand. Rolly, you're a successful businessman in your own right. Have there ever been times when you really wanted to get shot of this whole car thing? You ever wondered if it was worthwhile?
No, my word, many a time. There's no doubt about it. It's a very lonely road. But on the other side, of course, it's a challenge too, because when you devote a lot of time to it and check it out with the help of a lot of brilliant, qualified engineers that can accurately assess such a venture, it's on. So you'd be a traitor to everything you believe in if you didn't carry on. But at times, yes, I've wanted to throw the whole thing away. I have a profound respect for New Zealand engineers. I think that they're second to none in the world. And I think this has been proven by people like Bruce McLaren that go overseas developing racing cars. And in most of the prestige cars throughout the world, you'll find a New Zealander involved in a prominent position in respect of design. And I think that those people should be given an opportunity to develop what can only come under the terminology of Kiwi ingenuity.
The same Kiwi ingenuity was responsible for producing the prototype of a utility vehicle in 1964. It went into production as the Trekker 2 years later. Although it was mounted on an imported Skoda Octavia chassis, the Trekker had a local content of more than 70%. It hit the market at a time of shortage of light utilities. At one stage, there was a waiting list for Trekkers and some were being exported. Between 1966 and 1972, when production ceased at the Otahuhu factory, more than 3,000 Trekkers were built. Critics may scoff, but the Trekker is New Zealand's most successful vehicle so far. The man behind it was the late Noel Turner. Like Rolly Crowther, he dreamed of a locally built utility vehicle. He sold the idea to the board of his company. Today, his son Peter is a young executive in the motor trade. Peter, your father was quite a remarkable man. He had this ambition to build a New Zealand utility vehicle.
Yes, he had the people around him and the ability, I think, over the period of years of his experience in the trade, to build a car or a vehicle of some type. He chose a commercial vehicle because he could make it viable. That was the basic reason.
Why then did the Trekker cease production?
Without enthusiastic support of the government, the project itself was unable to generate the funds necessary to promote the product, to improve the product technically, and to really even put new product into the model range itself. So the consequences of this really were that the project became uneconomical.
But while the Trekker went out of production, in Rotorua, a small firm continued producing another utility vehicle with a similar sounding name. This is the Terror, and it's still in production. The Terror uses motors, transmissions and running gear salvaged from wrecked VWs, then reconditioned. It's ideal for farm work and has traction almost as good as a four-wheel drive. "400 Terrors have been produced, making the project the second most successful so far. But success was to elude another New Zealand vehicle project, the Anziel Nova. In the late 1960s, it was planned to build this fiberglass-bodied car with technical help from the British manufacturer Reliant. But the government refused to allow the company to import sufficient engines and gearboxes, so the project was abandoned. About this time came news of another New Zealand car project using a rotary engine designed by a Whangarei man. Development work got underway, and the public waited expectantly. But things started to go wrong, and there were plenty of critics. The company's attempt to sell shares went badly, and without capital, the project went the same way as the ill-fated Nova. Rolly Crowther had been the driving force behind this project too. The car still sits in his factory, a constant bitter reminder of success that just eluded him. Rolly was helped in the project by a number of bright young New Zealanders. Amongst them, Mini de Joux, a talented body designer. He designed the bodywork of Rolly Crowther's cars and several other vehicles besides. Amongst them, the Mini GT sports car, which utilised Leyland Mini running gear. De Joux wasn't trying to build a local car of his own, but just the same, the little cars proved popular with enthusiasts. The same basic concept of the Mini GT is embodied in the Magnum Spectre. Designed and built by Auckland panel beater Arthur Wilshire, it uses Morris 1300 parts. It's hoped to put the revolutionary-looking car into production, and at the moment 2 prototypes are on the road. It's estimated that a completed car, using new components, will cost about $8,000. At the Christchurch plant of Steel Brothers, they've been building the Lotus 7 for several years. Designed by Lotus, the racing car builder, the 7 is being made under license. It's not an all-New Zealand car, but then again, most of the components are made here. New Zealand is now the only place in the world you can buy a new Lotus 7, so they're being exported to Australia and the USA. These cars offer fantastic performance. They can accelerate from a standstill to 80 kilometers per hour in 5 seconds. Top speed is around 180 kilometers per hour. Back in the early 1950s, another high-performance car was produced in this country. It was known as the Buckler, and like the Lotus, had been designed in Britain. Most Bucklers were powered by 4-cylinder Ford side-valve engines. Racing versions use Coventry Climax power plants. It seems no one's sure how many New Zealand bucklers were built, and few remain on the roads today. There are only a few cars like this on New Zealand roads, but a young Auckland company is aiming to change that. Their car is called the Eureka and is based on a VW floor pan. The company plans to go into production with a wide variety of engine options available. Like the Lotus and the Buckler, the Eureka was designed overseas. In fact, 3,000 have been built. Steve Fleming, the man planning to produce the car in New Zealand, anticipates good sales.
Well, we've got involved in it about a year ago. We found out that there's a high demand for cars in New Zealand. We found out that we can produce this car with a new, say, Ford 1600 engine in it, 120 mile an hour plus, $8,500 on the road. We know there's a demand, and we think we can fulfill it.
A man who knows about designing cars and fulfilling demand now lives in Gisborne. He's David Williams, who designed cars for some of the biggest manufacturers in Britain, Germany and Australia. Now a consultant to the motor industry, he's looked at producing cars in New Zealand. He also has plans for his own car, a hand-built luxury sports model.
The people who start the designing of these cars don't realise how much development work has got to go into getting the car onto the public sale.
It'd take quite a while then, several years.
The industry itself can't do it quicker than 3 years. And a person who's doing it on his own or with a few people can probably estimate it's going to take twice that long.
So would you be faced with a situation there that a car was out of date by the time it went into production?
Yeah, a lot of these people start off with a pretty looking car, style today, and by the time they've got it ready for sale to the public, the thing's not quite as new and novelty like as it was when they first thought of it.
So can you see there ever being a chance for a viable local car industry in New Zealand?
Yep, I think there's a chance if they take it slow, if they become aware of what problems are ahead of them, and if they get the right kind of government backing. I think that's very important because it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of effort, and it's high risk money, and they've got to be very sure of the ground they're going on.
So would your advice be then to start small and build up?
Start small with a specific market and go for that market only.
How long do you think this is going to take?
Well, I can't see New Zealand having a really good, viable car industry of its own for another 15 years, 12, 15 years at the earliest.
Without real assistance at the highest levels, I cannot see, even with unprotected markets as they are today, any chance of a real motor car or commercial vehicle being produced in this country.
Rolly, from your experience, why is it that there's never been a volume-produced car in this country?
I think mainly it's because the New Zealand businessman's reluctance to invest in any project that has not got a track history in New Zealand. I think that's basically the cause of it.
But is there going to be a New Zealand car one day?
Quite definitely, there will be a New Zealand car, and it's not very... We should have had it 10 years ago.
It's been said that it's better to have tried and failed than to have never tried at all. For half a century, New Zealanders have spurned critics and tried to launch their own car. The attempts go on today. One day, one of them may hit the jackpot.